I'm Andrew Price.
And I'm Stephen Reyes. Welcome to Deep Cuts, the podcast where we walk you through the ins, the outs, and the nitty-gritty so you can appear like an interesting and idiosyncratic person at your next forced social function.
Today's topic is...
John McTiernan.
Who is John McTiernan? He's one of the most prolific Hollywood action directors of all time, helming such hits as Predator, Die Hard, and The Hunt for Red October. However, his career came to a screeching halt when he was sent to federal prison for lying to the FBI, and despite getting released back in 2014, hasn't directed a movie since. Act 1. Last Action Director. John Campbell McTiernan Jr. was born on January 8th, 1951, to John Sr. and Myra McTiernan. McTiernan would eventually attend Juilliard and then the AFI Conservatory, where he would study film, primarily under the tutelage of Czech filmmaker Jan Bedard. While there, he worked on commercials and managed to get enough money together for his first feature film, Nomads, starring an up-and-coming TV actor named Pierce Brosnan. The small horror film is about a French anthropologist who comes across a group of urban nomads harboring dark secrets with ghosts abounding. All right, so we're gonna take a look at the trailer for Nomads.
The owner was only here for a little while, but they did a good deal to the house.
It started out to be their dream house.
What do you think, huh?
A place to call their own.
Yeah, this has got... I watched the trailer prior to this, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I haven't actually seen this movie. You have.
Yes.
But I watched the trailer earlier, and it's got like a mid 80s slasher feel to it, which I just did not expect from a John McTiernan movie. And maybe the movie isn't actually like that, but the trailer has like a slasher feel to it.
It definitely, it's a very claustrophobic, like tense movie. Supposedly Arnold hired McTiernan for Predator because he loved Nomads, which was critically reviled. So I don't know what that says about Arnold's taste.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got like a slasher vibe, but also maybe like a little bit of like a Brian De Palma, like 70s Brian De Palma feel.
Look, there's a Die Hard shot right
Oh yeah, and there's just a shot that was just straight up Hans Gruber falling from Nakatomi Plaza. He just reused that.
And as I understand him, Brosnan did this movie largely because he was already sick of Remington's Steel.
Yeah, so it's got like a bit of like an early 80s slasher vibe to it, maybe like a little bit of like a Brian De Palma thing. I like that opening shot in the beginning of the trailer where it's like a lot of the movie seems like it's filmed like first person, and then the camera walks into a bathroom following a woman, and then the camera turns over, and it's a really cool effect because, you know, your brain is like, yeah, it's gonna be a camera.
I just see a camera there.
But then it's Pierce Brosnan, so it's like it like really sells the first person, and I just that shot looked really cool.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because the movie has that weird perspective where this woman who encountered Brosnan in the intro, who's like badly hurt, she's getting his story as an anthropologist, how he got into this situation. And so the movie does this sort of very strange but interesting motif where she's sort of inhabiting Brosnan's like memories and like his role in the life. So like that shot, they're hiding her obviously, and you're thinking, and then it's going to be, and then Brosnan pops into the frame. Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And I was we were talking about this before recording, but I've never, for whatever reason, I've never seen this movie, which I'm a pretty big John McTiernan fan. And I was looking at his IMDb, and I've seen every other movie he's made except for the last one.
Oh, Basic?
Basic. I never watched that because I was
incomprehensible.
Yeah, I was not interested. I don't feel like that one counts. But aside from that one, I've even seen fucking Rollerball. Yeah. Which we'll talk about Rollerball later on because it's kind of the crux of the story.
Yeah.
But I never watched this movie, and it looks like up my alley. I don't know why I've never watched this.
Yeah, I mean, it's got that like early 80s grimy look to it. Like you almost like Death Wish 2 or something like that. You know, there's a bunch of punks running around.
Death Wish type thing.
Or like The Substitute or Class of 1984, where, you know, the world is just full of psychotic punks, which was not most people's experience, I don't think.
Yeah.
But they made a lot of movies about it.
But to us who have primarily viewed the 80s through the lens of movies,
oh yeah,
it's just like
the 80s is nothing but psychotic punks.
Yeah, back in the 80s,
Rich
it was like the
bullies.
fucking apocalypse.
Yeah, toxic waste.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I've never seen the movie. That's a really interesting, like that's like a very interesting first film to make. Like just the conceit of that, the like first person, like it's got like a wraparound of him telling the story to somebody and then she's experiencing it. Like that's a strange, like conceit for somebody's first film.
It definitely feels like an attempt to stand out. Like, hey, I'm gonna wow everybody. I'm fresh out of AFI. I'm gonna, show my chops as a director. I mean, because it is visually interesting. Like you said, a lot of these shots are very like, hey, that's pretty cool. Stands out. Even if the movie itself is kind of insane.
Nomads didn't receive particularly great reviews when it came out in 1986, but it did manage to catch the attention of Arnold Schwarzenegger, who loved the way McTiernan captured a tense, foreboding atmosphere. While I have not seen Nomads, as we just discussed, I did know this because I also saw a screening of Predator.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was the same one, unless we just happened to accidentally be in this. We didn't realize we were together. It was at the Egyptian. It was at the Egyptian. Were you there?
Was it a double feature with The Running Man?
Okay. I don't remember, but I'll figure out. So at this screening of the Predator that I went to, which was at the Egyptian, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger was there. He did a Q&A, but this is a defining feature that you will definitely know if you were there or not. What's his name? The guy who plays Mac.
Yeah, Bill Duke.
Bill Duke.
I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. You were there?
Yeah, because Arnold was supposed to do like 5 minutes and stay for like an hour.
You were there?
I was there. Yeah.
What the fuck? And we knew each other. It wasn't like we didn't know each other then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at this screening that we were apparently both at and did not realize it, which is blowing my mind. Like I'm not joking. This is fucking blowing my mind. Arnold Schwarzenegger was there and he was doing a Q&A and Bill Duke was just in the audience. He wasn't even there. He literally just came to the screening.
I mean, he's a big McTiernan fan.
Yeah, he wasn't like there to speak. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger brought him on.
Yeah, he like spotted him in the audience.
Yeah, and he did the Q&A, but he wasn't there to do it. He was literally there to watch the movie.
I loved it because Arnold also sort of turned into the moderator and was like, ask Bill Duke questions. We're like, okay.
But anyway, back to the topic at hand. We got our boy Johnny McTee here. And I just wanted to take a look at him. I mean,
he looks like Mel Gibson.
He looks like Mel Gibson a little bit. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's just this picture. My thoughts on Johnny McTee here is he looks like John McTiernan.
Yeah.
He looks like John McTiernan. He looks like he is just like an old fashioned Irish dude. Like he lives in Boston and he's just Irish as fuck.
I mean, he has a very like blue collar look to him there, which kind of makes sense with his reputation. I mean, we're going to get into it, but his movies are very up and down. Like he's got some masterpieces and some absolute pieces of crap, but gets the movie done.
Schwarzenegger wanted McTiernan to direct Commando, but the script didn't appeal to him that much. He had his eye on a different script. Predator. If you listen to the show, you probably don't need much of a refresher on 1987's Predator. It's a perfect melding of horror and action sensibilities, and it puts McTiernan on the map. Predator was much better received than Nomads, and it continues to appear on best of horror and action movie lists, and many critics paid particular attention to McTiernan's deft hand at helming such a stellar film. Empire's review of the film notes,
John McTiernan's direction is claustrophobic, fluid, and assured, staging the action with aplomb, but concentrating just as much on tension and atmosphere.
Predator put McTiernan on the map, and he earned the attention of producers Joel Silver and Lawrence Gordon for their upcoming film, Die Hard. I wanted to stop and talk about Predator a little bit more before we moved on to
Predator,
Die Hard.
Was a bit of a nightmare to film because of the circumstances in the jungle and such, but also I'm sure you know that the original plan for Predator was
JCVD.
Yes, as the Predator, which by the way,
he was like a weird mantis.
Yes,
thing
he looks like
mantis.
a rejected Mos Eisley character.
Yeah,
like he doesn't look scary at all. He's not intimidating,
and the costume is just like bright orange because they were going to do some kind of special effect to make him like.
Yeah, I think it had something to do with
some early version of the Predator vision.
Exactly,
basically.
the camouflage of Predator being invisible, and then the other thing is that if you see set photos of this, there's only a few of Van Damme like in the costume with like the head off. He looks so like crushed and exhausted. Like he's not having a good time. The other guys are getting all the FaceTime and he's doing the thankless thing of this crappy thing. And the other thing about it too is just that JCVD had cut his teeth being a stuntman in some canon films. He's in a couple of Missing in Action movies where it's like he's wearing a bad wig and jumping over a wall pretending to be Chuck Norris. And so I think he did probably see Predator as, it's a much bigger budget with big stars as like a chance to be his springboard. And then,
he's like, oh, I'm just in this fucking orange mantis costume.
Yeah, and he was like, I don't even do the splits in this. What the? Considering
that's why he did the splits and it ripped. And they're like, fuck.
They're like, what are we gonna do? Long story short, they hire Stan Winston, and he's on a plane with Cameron, and Cameron says, I always wanted to see something with mandibles, and the rest is history. But considering all of that, they made this classic film. So, like, obviously, you're going to get a lot of cred out of that, McTiernan.
And that's something I want to talk about, because there's going to be multiple other examples of this, particularly in Die Hard. But I find it really fascinating, like the way that a lot of these movies, and it's a lot of movies, not just these in particular, but like so many movies have a story like this. But I find it so interesting that in John McTiernan's career specifically, there seems to be so many examples of this where his movies are very shaped by circumstance in a really interesting way, where it's like, it's on one hand, because one thing that I want to talk about with McTiernan a little bit is like, it's so interesting that he kind of doesn't have like a big body of work, mostly because he like went to fucking prison, and so he kind of ended his career. But he doesn't have a big body of work, which is interesting because I think of John McTiernan. I mean, he has some bad movies, but when he's on, his directing is like, I think of it as like so laser focused.
Oh yeah.
Like he's a director who's just like, if his movies feel carved out of stone, they feel predestined in a way. So it's very fascinating that when you actually look into the background of it, they're so shaped by like random shit happening and like things falling apart. And then like somebody doing this and it rippling over here. And this is the beginning of it where, you know, he makes Predator, and the movie was going to be this whole other thing, because if you haven't seen what the Predator originally was, it looks stupid.
It looks incredibly stupid.
And if the movie had come out in this form, I don't think it would have resonated and been as a classic, and then probably John McTiernan wouldn't have had like a career.
A big chunk of Predator's appeal is that it's genuinely scary the first time you watch it. Like they hide the Predator for a long time with the jungle stuff and the invisible camouflage and stuff and the mask even. And then eventually you see what it looks like, and it's like, holy hell, that looks really scary.
And the design of the Predator is like one of the all-time greatest creature designs. Yeah. So it's fucking wild that this went from like one of the dumbest things to like, not just like better. It's not like Sonic the Hedgehog where it was like, yeah, that looked like shit, and now it looks pretty good. Yeah. Like they made Sonic look like Sonic's supposed to be. Like, obviously you should have just done this in the first place. You had the fucking design already. Yeah. This is like horrible to like genuinely one of the coolest things you've seen ever.
Yeah, this is the gold standard of movie monster glow up.
But McTiernan was hesitant to sign on to this action flick. He discussed on the 2002 special edition DVD commentary for Die Hard,
my principal concern going into this was that it was a story that concerned terrorists, and terrorist movies are usually mean, filled with all sorts of mean, nasty acts. And I didn't say yes to this project until we figured out some ways to put it, in essence, some joy in it.
Which is what I was talking about before. Die Hard is an even bigger example of it, because as you know, and we can talk about a little bit, there are a bunch of weird labyrinthian circumstances that led to this movie being made from like all sides. There was not a part of this movie that wasn't chaotic. The movie, which many people don't know, is based on a book that is a sequel to a different book that was made into a movie in the 60s with Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, The Detective.
And basically what they did in the 60s is they wanted like another Jack Reacher, basically. They were like, oh, this is going to be the next Jack Reacher. This is going to be the next James Bond. They were like they were trying to get in early on like the next big action spy franchise where a writer was going to write 20 books and then they were going to make movies for all of them. And so they made The Detective. And then the guy wrote one other book, and then never wrote another book in the series.
Yeah, Roderick
Thorpe. And so they made this movie, and they optioned the entire franchise that didn't exist. And so in the 80s, they had this option, and it was just like sitting on a shelf somewhere. And I think Joel Silver at some point was just like, let's just fucking do something with this. We just have this thing. Let's just make a movie with this. So they put the movie into production, but there were a bunch of different details that needed to be worked out. Number one, because they had optioned this franchise back in the 60s, technically, based on the contract, they had to offer the role to Frank Sinatra, who was 82.
Yeah, to reprise his role.
As like a ornamental gesture.
Yeah.
They had to contact Frank Sinatra and be like, hey, do you want to be in this movie as this like guy who's like fighting terrorists in a building?
You'll be playing your character from 22 years ago.
Yeah. And he was just like, nah.
Yeah. I like this idea of they're like, what if he says yes? He won't say yes. No, but what if he does say yes? I guess we're going to make this movie.
Yeah. Part of you like wishes that there was that movie. So that happens with Frank Sinatra, and he says, nah, I'm good. I'm going to die. I'm going to die soon. I'm about to die.
Suck it to me.
Yeah. But he died at 86 or something like that.
Yeah, remember he died the day of the Seinfeld finale.
Oh.
I know this because I was at a Dodger game when it happened. But yeah, no, they were doing like fun Seinfeld things. Like they did a lookalikes, and we were like watching this, and then later on they were like, ladies and gentlemen, your attention. Moment of silence. Frank Sinatra has died. And we're like, oh, that's okay.
What a way to find out. But he says no, and so they're like, okay, we're good with that. We're clear with that. We don't have to put an old man in this. So the other thing is Steve D'Souza and also Jeb Stewart, who was the other co-writer, they were tasked with writing the script, and they just like, they couldn't crack it. They were just like, I don't know. I can't figure out what this movie is. It sucks. And they would turn in drafts, and the producer would be like, nope, this is bad. You gotta redo this. And they were stuck on it. And so one night, Jeb Stewart, he gets into an argument with his wife, and he storms out of the house, and he gets into his car, and he gets on the freeway he gets on the 405, and he's driving, and he's like, fuck my wife. And then he goes around a corner, and there's a refrigerator box in the middle of the freeway.
Okay.
And for like a split second, he thinks he's gonna die because he just there's like a fucking refrigerator,
speed, yeah.
And he hits the refrigerator box, and it's an empty box.
Yeah.
And he's fine. And at that moment, he figures out what Die Hard is, and he says, "We need to change the daughter to his wife," and the whole movie needs to be, he says something to his wife that he doesn't mean,
right? And
then terrorists take over the building, and he spends the entire movie trying to get his wife so that he can say sorry.
Yeah, so that's not the last thing he said.
Yeah,
yes.
That's the whole movie, and they figure it out.
Brilliant. I never thought about that before, but yeah, McClane that's his whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, he starts off that way. He's telling Argyle in the limo about how he didn't back her up when she made the movie. He thought she'd come back.
Yeah.
And then they have that nice moment when they meet up again. And then the first thing he does is be an asshole again. Yeah. And then she leaves the room and the terrorists take over.
Yeah. And so I find it so fascinating that between this like literal come to Jesus, almost literal come to Jesus moment.
I'm going to die right now.
Yeah. Between that and the weird contract thing with Frank Sinatra, and then this here, which I actually didn't know this until looking into this for the episode, the fact that John McTiernan didn't want to do the movie because he thought that it was just too like mean-spirited of a movie, and he wanted to give it a little bit more heart, which obviously shapes the character of John McClane. He's not just like a forged in steel Arnold Schwarzenegger archetype. Right. They originally reached out to Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone to be John McClane.
There's a who's who of people who turned down Die Hard. It was those two, Al Pacino, De Niro, I believe Harrison Ford, Richard Gere, like a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, but they turned him into like a normal dude who is primarily inspired not by like, oh, I gotta save all these people and I'm like a badass. He's primarily motivated by just wanting to reconcile with his wife. And all of these things came together to create this like near perfect film that feels super intentional, but it's just a bunch of random shit happening.
Even the terrorists in Die Hard all have little bits of personality in a way that they're little acting choices or things that they do that make they're kind of endearing. Like the one guy's pissed about, I want revenge for my brother. How could like McClane kill my brother?
Yeah.
You've got Al Leong, the all-time great henchman, who's stealing a candy bar and is like in the middle of a shootout.
Yeah, little touches like that. I mean, one of the greatest one.
Right.
Is the FBI agents who they just drop like a whole movie's worth of world building in like 2 seconds before immediately dying.
Agent Johnson and Agent Johnson, no relation.
Yeah. Just that little detail, which is like, what's going on there? Like they this happens all the time. People constantly think that they're related, even though he's like a black guy, he's a white guy. And they have to always correct. And then they're up in the helicopter and he's like, just like back in Saigon. And you're just like, I want to see a fucking movie of these guys. And then they die. But anyway, yeah, the movie is like, in my opinion, a near perfect action movie. And it's like, even stuff like the exposition dumps are just so masterfully handled to a point where you're like, I wish every movie figured out a way to do exposition in this way. Because, in the beginning of the movie, he gets picked up by Argyle and they're in the limo. And they have to establish a bunch of stuff. They have to establish like who he is, why he's there, his relationship to his wife, the dynamic of them. They have to establish all this stuff. And so the way that they do that is that he's in a limo with this like really nosy, charismatic limo driver. Yeah. And he's like pulling information out of him.
Yeah, McClane actually doesn't talk very much.
Yeah.
Like you're very perceptive, Argyle.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, is he married? Is he divorced? And he's like, and
filling in the blanks.
Yeah. And like John McClane doesn't want to talk about it. And he's like forcing him. And and because of that, it's a fun scene, which exposition dumps, they're classically, the whole point of them is that they're just getting information out and they're not fun. No. They're usually like, it's like a stereotype that exposition dumps are just like boring and like you just have to get through them to get to like the next thing.
It's masterfully done. I mean, our first time we meet McClane, this badass cop, is holding a giant teddy bear. He looks like an idiot. And then on top of that he doesn't say I'm a cop until after the guy sees his gun and is like, oh shit, on the plane. And he's like, I'm a cop. But he doesn't like harp on it. It's like, there, you got it. It's done. We've said one sentence.
McTiernan wanted Die Hard to have more of a summer blockbuster feel and not focus so much on political machinations. He also wanted to change the script, which took place over the course of several days, so that it occurred over a single night in the vein of William Shakespeare's A Midsummer's Night's Dream. McTiernan's girlfriend at the time had a chance meeting with someone at CinemaScore, a marketing research company, to determine if Bruce Willis would be a good fit for the lead role of John McClane. Up until that point, Willis was mostly known for his work on the TV show Moonlighting, but the research suggested Willis being in Die Hard wouldn't hurt the film's prospects, so Willis got cast. Which is wild. That's a wild detail that I did not know, because another detail of Die Hard, as we kind of alluded to before, is they were reaching out to a bunch of classic 80s action movie hero type people, and the archetype of an action star in the 80s was very specific. We don't really think about it now because we have Die Hard in our historical context. So it seems very normal. But at the time, people were like, Bruce Willis? What the fuck?
I mean, this is the 80s. I mean, we're about a year out from the same thing with Keaton as Batman, where people are like, Mr. Mom is going to be Batman? And they're like, this guy is on the sexy detective show is going to be
but
shooting terrorists.
But in that case, but the interesting thing is, in that case, Tim Burton had to fight for Michael Keaton, right. and he had a little bit of clout, and so he had some sway. So whenever he was like, nope, Michael Keaton is my Batman, it's him or nothing, or I walk. So he had to basically just throw his weight behind convincing the studio to cast Michael Keaton, despite the fact that they were like, what? Like, Michael Keaton? But the interesting thing about this, which I didn't really know this wrinkle before, is that they basically like just looked at an algorithm and were like, nope, yep, Bruce Willis is gonna be good.
I like the implication. Well, it won't hurt the movie.
Yeah.
Like, not like this is a plus in any way, but it's a neutral move.
We've talked way too long about Die Hard specifically. There's a whole other there's you might not know this at this point, but there's a whole other thing that this episode is about. But Die Hard fucking rules. So I guess.
And is in fact
deserves
a
its flowers.
Christmas movie, according to McTiernan on record.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Is like, I mean, here's the thing. First of all, I put the debate of whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie in the same category as whether pineapple belongs on pizza or not, where I I find it very annoying that there is even a debate about it. Right. Because the thing about Die Hard being a Christmas movie, it's just like a joke. It's like a thought experiment. It's it's just like, oh, it's an action movie, but it takes place on Christmas, and there's like, he's wearing the sweater that says ho ho ho, and like, so people are like, wait, it's the same thing of like people saying, oh, is Paul Bunyan a kaiju? Like, it's one of those things. It's one of those things. It was never meant to be a real debate.
Right.
But social media turned it into a real debate. And it's the same thing with pineapple on pizza. It's like, some people like it and some people don't. It's not a thing to argue about. For people who are emotionally invested in whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie or not, it's already been solved. McTee's already given the final word on it. I will pre-warn you, though, that his explanation for it is odd and doesn't really make any sense.
More confusing.
Okay, if you want me to make this terrorist movie, I want to make it where the hero, in the first scene, when the limo driver apologizes that he's never driven a limo before, the hero says, it's all right, I've never ridden in a limo before.
What do we do now?
I was hoping you could tell me. It's my first time driving a limo.
It's okay. It's my first time riding in one.
Okay, it was working class hero. And Joel understood what I meant. And he said, okay. And so we started to work on it, and he had the nerve to follow through with it too, so that we could actually make the movie we've been talking about. And other people started to catch on that this was a movie where the hero was a real human being, and the people of authority, all of the important folks, were all portrayed as kind of foolish. And it sort of, the whisper got around that this was a movie that had escaped, where the content had escaped and was in control of the paint daubers. And Steve D'Souza, the writer, completely got it. He understood. And Chuck DeGovia, the designer, understood. And Bruce came to understand in his way. And Jan de Bont completely got it. And in fact, everybody, as they came to work on the movie, began to get, as I said, this idea of this movie's an escapee. And there was a joy in it. Because we were, all the scratchers on the side of the king's tomb, and we had changed the content. And that is how Die Hard became it. We hadn't intended it to be a Christmas movie, but the joy that came from it is what turned it into a Christmas movie.
So first of all, this is from a longer 30-minute interview, and I've watched the whole thing. And for some reason, for the entire interview, he's like on his ranch in Wyoming or something, and he's like standing out on like a porch. And for some reason, the entire interview, instead of looking into the camera, he's got his back turned to the camera. So he's standing, it's like a profile shot of him standing on this porch, like leaning over the awning of the porch. And he's looking back over his shoulder to the camera. The explanation is a little bit incomprehensible, but basically what he's saying is like, because they took the story as it originally existed, and because it was so thoroughly changed, and they changed the daughter to the wife, and they gave it more of a happy ending, and they introduced the heart into it, and because everybody was like having fun, like taking this studio movie and like turning it into their own thing, there was this joy that like reverberated out through the entire production, and because of this joy, they just all came together and turned it into a Christmas movie.
I buy that. I mean, watching that movie, like you said, you watched it at Christmas, the cast all seem like they like each other a lot. Like, it seemed like they're having a good time. Like, it doesn't seem like it was a pain in the ass to film or anything. And, I mean, I buy it. That was a very bizarre way of explaining it on McTiernan's part.
At this point, it was safe to say John McTiernan could pretty much do anything he wanted. He was one of the most exciting directors working. However, Many of his follow-up projects would never come to fruition. One was The Adventures of Robin Hood, which fell through due to a couple of other Robin Hood projects being in the works at the time, including Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, starring Kevin Costner. Costner was actually offered a part in McTiernan's Adventures of Robin Hood, but signed on for Prince of Thieves because they offered more money. So basically, McTiernan almost prevented Bryan Adams from taking over culture for like 5 years. He tried to stop it. McTiernan and Schwarzenegger also wanted to work together again on a Sergeant Rock movie based on the DC Comics character with a script from Shane Black. John Cleese was supposed to star opposite Schwarzenegger, but when he dropped out, the project died. McTiernan's actual next project would wind up being The Hunt for Red October, starring Sean Connery. The film would win the Oscar for Best Sound Editing, along with getting nominations for Best Film Editing and Best Sound Mixing. Not to discredit those art forms, but as a director, it must feel like such a punch in the gut for your movie to win or be nominated for a bunch of like technical awards, but just not anything to do with your actual role in it at all.
Hunt for Red October is a good one. Young Alec Baldwin was a force, and of course Connery is the man.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, yeah, I'm not a Tom Clancy fan either, or I'm not a John Grissom fan or any of these like political thriller.
I enjoyed
novels.
Rainbow Six on N64.
Yeah. McTiernan was on a roll with critically acclaimed hit movies, but things would gradually get more lopsided throughout the 1990s. 1992's Medicine Man was pretty roundly panned, while Last Action Hero, which would see McTiernan finally direct a script written by Shane Black, would see similar negative reviews. This is the part where we got to talk about this. We got to stop and we got to talk about Last Action Hero, because we used to talk about this back in the day.
Yeah.
This was a thing we used to talk about in the office.
Yeah.
But like it's a pretty famous take, I guess, about Last Action Hero, that it, like, despite the sum of its parts, it's just like a bad movie. Mm-hmm. Like, it should be really good because it's Schwarzenegger and it's John McTiernan and it's Shane Black and the premise of it, but it just falls flat. Mm-hmm. I couldn't disagree more. I fucking love Last Action Hero. I drank that Kool-Aid for a while when I was a teenager, and I was just like, oh yeah, Last Action Hero, it's like, should be good, but it's not. But that's not true at all. It's great.
It feels like a movie that's ahead of its time because of the meta element. I mean, now it's like a postmodern movie that before most people knew what that meant.
It's a movie that would be made now, but like so cynically, and like an excuse to like pack a bunch of IP into something.
Yes. Whereas like Last Action Hero, other than the T-1000 showing up, for the most part, is just sort of a pastiche.
Yeah, it's like characters that are like, they're like parodies.
Yeah,
and
like the police chief guy and the psychologist and all that, and
and like the cartoon cat cop who's like, right, instead of being Bugs Bunny or something, he's just like a generic cat guy.
He's very clearly bonkers, but not bonkers. For me, I think Last Action Hero is a little long. That would be like my main criticism of it. It kind of loses steam. Again, you brought it up earlier. The kid isn't great, which kind of drags it down a little bit, because he's got to carry a lot of the emotion you're supposed to feel. I mean, like, Arnold kills it in that movie as Jack Slater.
100%.
Like he knew the assignment. Like, he crushes it.
McTiernan would return to well-worn territory with Die Hard with a Vengeance and round out the decade with the Thomas Crown Affair and the 13th Warrior.
So we should talk about Die Hard with a Vengeance. It's really good. It's not on the level of Die Hard, but like, if Die Hard is an A+, this is an A. Like an A- maybe. I mean, Sam Jackson is so good as, like, just giving McClane shit the entire time. Die Hard with a Vengeance, if I recall, is one of those ones that went through like 10 different versions, where it was like a bunch of spec scripts were hammered into Die Hard.
I mean, it's so much better than Die Harder.
Well, I think that Die Hard with a Vengeance was originally written as a Lethal Weapon 3, and then or it might have just been a spec because it was called Simon Says, because and then they like moved, they did the whole thing by turning it into Gruber brother with Jeremy Irons. I like Die Hard too. I don't think it's as bad as everybody says it is. I think it's ironic that, as we discussed earlier about them optioning the rights to this franchise, whatever, then they just kind of started making their own movies, like, because Die Hard 2 is actually, again, based off a book, but not a book, not The Detective or whatever, Joe Leland. It's some terrorist airport book called like 93 Minutes or something. I enjoy it. It's dark. that part where the plane crashes into the ground is hard to watch.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like McTiernan read the script and was like, nope, like, that's too far.
Too nasty.
And then, what's his name? The director of that, he's the guy, Rennie Harlan was like, I'll do this. Hell yeah. I've killed so many people on Nightmare on Elm Street. But it is kind of, it's lesser. Like, you have, like, the fake Reginald VelJohnson, who's, like, that guy who's, like, running the airport with the gray hair. I think Die Hard 2 is okay. And I will say I love the title Die Harder. That is an amazing title. But yes, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Jeremy Irons. Amazing casting. And then the opening with the summer in the city and then the bomb going off and, like, just devastation. It's like, damn, you're in this movie. You can feel the heat. Like, it is closer to something like Do the Right Thing than it is an action movie. In that, like, everything's like sweaty, intense, and you could feel like New York City's about to blow. Yeah, it does a great job.
Ultimately, McTiernan didn't want to keep making action movies, even though that's where his career usually gravitated. And he turned down a lot of high-profile projects to avoid getting stuck in the same place.
So I've gotten an awful lot of movies that were people just wanted me to make the same movie I had already made.
I think you said no to Mission Impossible, to Batman Forever, to Speed, to Terminator 3.
Yeah, all of those.
Why?
And loads of others. Well, I just didn't want to make the same movie again. I never saw Fellini do that. You know, I never saw men who were good at it. I never saw Kubrick do that. I never saw him go make the same movie again. I mean, talk about making different movies. And as a career, he made the most different movies one could ever imagine. Everyone was completely in a whole new world. So he was constantly working. He was constantly inventing.
But did you try to do that? Or because of your success, you had to do other action movies? You were cursed by some of your success, maybe.
Oh,
I don't
sure.
know.
Well, actually, what I should have done was I stopped living in Hollywood, but I should have come to Europe, which Kubrick did. He went to England. Yes, I should have left after. Certainly, well, Red October wasn't a bad experience. But I certainly should have left after Last Action Hero. Because that was, one of these crazy giant, they're not even movies. It's like you're working for the executives of an amusement park, and they're putting in a new roller coaster.
You're talking about Rollerball?
Yeah, it was a terrible movie.
So what I take from this,
Like, yeah, that was depressing.
It's amazing to me that that clip started with him comparing himself to Fellini and Kubrick. It really, because kind of have a feel for who John McTiernan is now and why he ends up the way he does, which we'll talk about soon.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear him say that stuff and say like, Fellini didn't make the same movie twice. Kubrick didn't make the same movie twice, because it's like really, you really think you're at the level of Stanley Kubrick and Federico Fellini? And it's interesting because, like, on one hand, you have a guy he's saying this stuff like he's putting forth this image of himself as this uncompromising filmmaker who wants to stay committed to his vision, and he doesn't want to get roped into one specific thing. But when you actually look at his body of work, it's like, okay, he turned down Speed and Terminator 3 because he didn't want to make the same movie. But like his body of work doesn't reflect that. Like it looks like he should have just taken those jobs because it was just more work. Because when you look at his actual body of work, like he did just make a bunch of action movies. Like he didn't like make a bunch of different types of movies. His movies are all kind of pretty similar.
Yeah, except for Nomads.
Yeah.
He didn't, that's funny. I didn't know that he was offered Speed, so they basically went to him, he said no, and then they hired his cinematographer, Jan de Bont, who directed that, and I believe Twister. I mean, I get what he's saying, but at the same time, it's like, I think he kind of came across kind of stupid in that thing where he is saying he doesn't want to make like the same kind of corporate movie, which I get.
Well, that's the thing about it. It's like the way he's talking, he's like alluding to Stanley Kubrick and Fellini, and you can tell like he wants to feel like that kind of filmmaker,
right? But
he's a studio filmmaker,
right?
Or at least he was.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, you don't want to make action movies over and over again, but like, you're not that guy. You make movies for fucking Paramount.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say he came across as stupid. I think his point is a little muddled because I get what he's saying, but at the same time, like, I would not compare Batman Forever to like Die Hard. It's like a totally different movie. And then especially like Terminator 3 is a sci-fi, like it's got like a apocalypse and all this stuff in it in the future. Like he's not done anything like that to this point. Maybe he didn't want to work with Arnold again in terms of like, if people think of it as an Arnold movie, you know? It's
just so funny, the idea of him being like, yeah, after Last Action Hero, then I'm going to go to Europe and make an art film. And it's like, you think they're going to go to Europe and they're like, oh, your last movie was Last Action Hero? Yeah.
Jerry Lewis.
You're the next Fellini, baby.
Yeah. I'm curious though, because like, okay, like he has his Robin Hood project there that we talked about, that was obviously a dream thing for him, but like, it sounds to me like that was going to be a cool action movie, like, right? And
that feels less like a person who's actually had like an uncompromising vision, and it feels more like a guy that just like wanted to be seen as that. He turns down Batman Forever, he turns down Speed, all these big movies, but then like he doesn't get his dream project, and so he just does a different action movie. So like he's always like turning down a bunch of work, holding out for his dream project that never happens, and then he's like, fuck, I need to pay my bills. All right, Hunt for Red October. All right, Rollerball or whatever. And so it's just him turning down work. There's no he's not following through on any kind of vision. He's just like getting in his own way. We'll get back to Rollerball. But so far, this sounds like a pretty rudimentary Hollywood career. There's been some massive hits and a few misfires, but all in all, John McTiernan proved himself perfectly adept at helming action flicks to great acclaim. Why dedicate an entire episode to the guy who directed Die Hard, no matter how sweet the movie is? Well, this all led up to the film that would begin John McTiernan's downfall. 2002's Rollerball, starring Chris Klein, Rebecca Romijn, LL Cool J, and the band Slipknot, which I did not remember that detail.
You know, Fellini didn't work with them either.
Yeah, Fellini, his movies with Slipknot, they were more uncompromising.
Yeah.
It's a remake of the original 1975 film, both of which are based on William Harrison's short story, Rollerball Murder. The basic premise involves a dystopian society obsessed with the violent sport of rollerball, and the main characters discovering there could be a conspiracy afoot that's pre-planning murders.
So that's very similar to The Running Man.
Yeah, very much. It's just The Running Man, but with a weird,
well, it seems like
a ball game.
Though the novel, it certainly predates the Running Man novel, which is not like the movie at all.
Yeah, the Stephen King short story.
Yeah, well, Richard Bachman.
Oh yeah, whoops, fuck.
They're two very different men.
I broke the kayfabe. Stephen King sues me.
Oh, yeah, he's just stopped listening minutes ago.
The movie was critically trashed and is overall seen as a mess, something that could have been seen from the lead up to its release. According to reports, McTiernan didn't want the social commentary prevalent in the original film and instead wanted more emphasis on bloody action and titillating costumes. Test screenings proved disastrous, as one attendee noted,
"There is not a single moment in the entire film that begins to compare to the original Rollerball. The action is amateurish by comparison, the dramatics and character work are childishly ill-conceived, and the more and more you think about the film, the more miserable it becomes."
The only positive noted in the review is that it's at least an unapologetically R-rated bloodbath, but the studio, MGM, wanted to make some changes. They immediately ordered reshoots following the test screenings and aimed to release it as a PG-13 film instead of R. This might be the thing to land most filmmakers in director's jail for a little bit, but for McTiernan, he would wind up in a literal, actual prison from Rollerball. And it's all due to his connection with infamous Hollywood fixer Anthony Pellicano. I mean, that's when you like know that a movie is like truly terrible, is when it inspires like a poetic negative review. Somebody like reached down deep to like criticize this.
See, now I want to, let's see here, click the soundtrack. I want to know if LL Cool J recorded a track for it as well, if there was any brand synergy right there. He didn't.
No,
you got LL Cool J in the movie, but he doesn't do.
Yeah, LL Cool J's in the movie, but it's like very, it's the the soundtrack is like weirdly like antiquated to the late 90s. Like this movie came out in 2002.
Yeah, it's all new metal.
But it's like new metal from 1998. It's a POD drowning pool.
Yeah, so the implication is that they
Slipknot.
hired LL Cool J purely for his acting ability.
Yeah. Godsmack.
And Rob Zombie twice.
Fear Factory, not Fear Factor. Hoobastank. Hoobastank was like early 2000s.
And then for some reason, When I Come Around off of Dookie.
Hoobastank is weirdly the most contemporary band on this soundtrack. Everything else is like somebody who just like couldn't move on from 1997.
And I'm belaboring the point, but I don't think Fellini worked with any of these people.
No, definitely not. Fellini's usage of Hoobastank needle drops.
Like Kubrick, big Rob Zombie guy.
Yeah.
Fellini, no.
Not many people know, but the Seventh Seal is actually the entire soundtrack is Hoobastank.
Well, remember, the Seventh Seal is in Last Action Hero.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a...
Yeah, the Grim Reaper, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is weird because, like, in the 90s, the Seventh Seal was like a weird point of pop cultural
I know
reference
exactly where you're going with this.
because there's like a massive plot point in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey that they go to hell, but the Grim Reaper is like the Seventh Seal versions of Grim Reaper, and the whole scene is like a parody of the Seventh Seal where they play chess against the Grim Reaper and then they win. And then the Grim Reaper becomes their friend.
Yeah, but they beat him at chess, and then it turns into like a best of 5.
Yeah, they're playing Twister.
Yeah, they play Twister. They play the little wind up football.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just want to take a little bit of a time here for a second to kind of like address what's happening right now, because some people, this show Deep Cuts has been around since March 11th of 2020, and you know, for reasons that I'm not really going to get into right now, Dave has had to take a indefinite hiatus from the show. He's going to be gone for 2 months, 3 months, maybe upwards of 5-6 months. We don't know for sure. Everything's okay. He's fine, but he can't do the show. So we decided we would just keep the show running, and I would, get some guest hosts, whether that's one, whether that's just you, or whether it's a couple of people. It's kind of up in the air right now. This is a little bit of an experiment. I'm not gonna lie.
You've been talking to other people?
Yeah. So that's what we're doing right now. Basically, what we're going to do is we have 5 episodes of the show that are pre-recorded with me and Dave, and we're going to run one of those every other week. And then in between those, we're going to do an episode with me and a guest, and we'll do that until we run out of the 5 episodes. And at that point, that's about 3 months of time. Hopefully Dave will be back. And if not, then we'll move to a weekly format with a guest. And so we'll just do that for as long as Dave needs to get to a place where he can come back to the show. And then we'll continue on from there. But that's what we're going to do. So this is my buddy, Steven.
It's fun to be able to geek out on a bunch of stuff that the vast majority of people I know would not care even slightly about.
If nothing else, that is what the purpose of this show is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, back to the show. Act 2, Wiretap Hard with a Vengeance. John McTiernan had many disagreements with the studio about how Rollerball should be handled. In particular, he disagreed with one of the film's producers, Charles Roven, and it was later found he hired fixer Anthony Pellicano to wiretap Roven's phones so that he could find instances where Roven made negative remarks about studio executives that went against what he would have told them face to face. So, before we go any further, who is Anthony Pellicano?
Well, let's just pause for a moment and just laugh at the fact that all we've been given is fixer.
Yeah.
Which is, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
That's, the kind of thing that you heard about in like Hail Caesar times.
It almost has like an element of like magical realism to it, where it's like, what do you mean fixer? Like, that's a person, that's a real type of person?
This raises a lot of questions about like, how did McTiernan meet this guy? How did he hear about him? Like, I heard you make problems go away. Like, you know what I mean? Like, who is McTiernan hanging out with that set this up?
Yeah.
You don't look up Anthony Pellicano in the yellow pages, I don't think.
So Anthony Pellicano is a private investigator and fixer who's worked with numerous high-profile clients to cover up their misdeeds or dig up dirt on their opposition. He was notably hired by Bill Clinton's 1992 presidential election to discredit Jennifer Flowers, who claimed that she had a 12-year affair with the then presidential candidate. And later, he was hired to do the same thing to Monica Lewinsky. McTiernan also hired Pellicano to get some dirt. He was in dispute with Charles Roven about how the film should be and wanted to get some dirt on him that would cause other executives to dislike him. It's funny because as we get into it, and it's like, oh, he goes to prison for this. That's such like a little bitch move. It's like such a little bitchy thing to do. It's so funny to me that is what he goes to prison for, is like being a little bitch.
It's kind of funny that he in that video we watched, he makes a big deal about how like he didn't want to do like he's like mentally checked out on like these action movies, and yet he's apparently so invested in rollerball he hires a fixer to like try and sabotage his producer to get his way.
Yeah,
like
it's such a melodramatic thing. It's just so funny that ends up
like,
putting him in prison.
Nobody else is gonna tell me what I can't do with LL Cool J in this movie.
But the house of cards would soon fall. On November 21st, 2002, the FBI would raid Pellicano's offices after they suspected him of making a threat to Julius R. Nasso, who was suing Steven Seagal at the time. During the raid, the FBI found 2 practice grenades that were modified to work as homemade bombs, as well as a military-grade C4 plastic explosive. Pellicano would later plead guilty to possession of dangerous materials and sentenced to 30 months in federal prison. However, this was only the beginning of a lengthy discovery process. In 2006, Pellicano would be indicted on 110 extra counts, with some of his other alleged crimes including racketeering, identity theft, wiretapping, witness tampering, destruction of evidence, and conspiracy. And what was John McTiernan doing during all this? He was making his next and final movie thus far, 2003's Basic, starring John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson. The movie is about a DEA agent looking into the mystery surrounding a training exercise that led to the deaths of several Army Ranger trainees. Which, once again, it's funny because like there's like a bookend of John McTiernan's career where I did not see Nomads,
yeah.
And I did not see this movie, but I've seen everything else.
I have seen Basic. I don't recall anything about it other than it's like incomprehensible. Like it has like multiple endings or something, and you just can't understand. I remember again Roger Ebert's criticism of it was like, I have no idea what happened. Like Roger Ebert said something about how like if a movie is so bad that you need to see it twice, like they better nail it the first time because I'm not going to watch it a second time or something like that. And it's got like one of those weird false endings that actually like undermines the entire movie. So you're like, oh, well, this is all pointless.
Yeah.
Kind of sad considering you got Travolta and Sam Jackson together, first time since Pulp Fiction, both, you know, still pretty at the height of their powers. I mean, Travolta had kind of fallen off by 2003, but he was still making some big stuff. He wasn't in the well,
he wasn't in his Wild Hogs phase.
Yeah.
The movie was a disaster, bombing both with critics and at the box office. In 2014, McTiernan would say of making the film,
"It was an absolute fucking nightmare. The week before shooting, I was told I was going to have to shoot the original draft of the screenplay, which didn't work. Furthermore, I was sent a lawyer's letter saying I couldn't tell this to the studio and would be sued if I tried to communicate it to them. I was able to squirrel away $500,000 to do reshoots, but the story still makes no sense. No sense at all."
There's no other vote of non-confidence than the director of the movie just being like, this is a steaming pile of shit. McTiernan had other projects lined up following Basic that never came to fruition, like a movie called Crash Bandits, set to star Hayden Christensen, about 2 guys finding old crashed World War II planes. Which I'm not going to lie, when I first read that, I thought for a second it said Crash Bandicoot.
I did too.
And I was like, imagine that, directed by John McTiernan.
Yeah, Hayden Christensen is Crash Bandicoot.
Which, like, sounds insane, but it also sounds like literally a video game movie that would have been made in the late 90s.
Oh, for sure. I could see that. They're like, yeah, people love that Star Wars stuff.
But nothing would ever actually happen with Crash Bandits or other movies in the works, because in 2006, he'd be charged in federal court for making false statements of knowing about Anthony Pellicano's wiretapping. McTiernan pleaded guilty on April 17, 2006, as part of a plea bargain to get more lenient treatment, in addition to continuing to assist the FBI in their investigation. However, prosecutors believed McTiernan wasn't telling the truth and sought a prison sentence instead. McTiernan responded by withdrawing his guilty plea and taking his case to trial. He also fired his legal team for giving what he thought was bad information about taking the plea. The judge promptly rejected McTiernan's attempt to refute his plea deal and had a real bone to pick with the Hollywood director. Judge Fisher mentioned how McTiernan believed he was above the law, while also stating,
"If anything, Mr. McTiernan's privileged background is an aggravating factor."
This feels like the legal equivalent of his directing career, and the fact that he just like gets in his own way by just being kind of like a blowhard. Because it's like he like talked himself into prison.
Yeah, it's like he couldn't let other people handle it.
Yeah.
Which is like exactly why he got in trouble, because he couldn't let Charles Roven handle it.
Yeah.
Rollerball. This judge seems pretty pissed. I think he was like, I saw Basic. Like, give me my $10 back.
Fucking Rollerball.
Yeah, exactly.
You had LL Cool J in it, and there's not a single fucking LL Cool J song on the soundtrack? Jail.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Slipknot.
Yeah.
Drowning Pool.
For a guy with that much money, presumably, he's making bank. Director usually makes bank for these huge blockbusters. You would think that he could afford good lawyers.
Yeah.
So you're assuming he did, but so like you said, maybe he just was like, I could do this better. I'll represent myself or whatever.
Just kind of like a control freak, and like a little bit of like he has like a really inflated sense of himself. And
yeah, I mean, obviously, like they took it to trial, they did discovery, they had him dead to rights. So it's like if you're gonna get 4 months, like that's like a slap on the wrist. And even as we're gonna find out in his later, he goes to like minimum security white collar prison.
The judge ordered an additional $100,000 fine on top of 4 months in prison. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals would later overturn this ruling and allow McTiernan to withdraw his plea, but that was probably a bad move to take. When the case reopened, the prosecution filed additional charges against McTiernan, this time with 2 counts of lying to the FBI. One of these was about denying ever discussing wiretapping with Pelicano, while the other was about claiming that he only hired Pelicano in relation to his divorce proceedings with Donna Dubrow. Yes, his ex-wife filed a lawsuit against him as well in 2006, claiming that he hired Pelicano to wiretap her during their divorce negotiations, but it was ultimately dismissed in 2016. McTiernan also faced an additional charge of committing perjury during the previous coach proceedings by denying being coached by his attorney of what to say. He
just doesn't want to take orders from anybody.
Yeah, he just cannot leave well enough alone. Like, as we're about to find out, he talked his way out of 4 months in prison into like a year. That didn't have to happen. I mean, none of this had to happen. He could have just fucking made this dumb rollerball movie and moved on. But once he was on trial, he could have gotten away with nothing.
Think about that, like, of all things that have, like, of all the things that happened to him, like, he lost it all over rollerball.
Rollerball.
Yeah. Like, this is not, considering that interview we watched earlier, you could maybe see some angle of his perspective if this was like his passion project that he'd been fighting for his whole life. This is the thing that's going to break him out of that action movie mold. This would be his Kubrick, his Fellini, and he's willing to fight until the edge, fight dirty. No, this is like a work for hire.
Yeah, you would almost sympathize and see him as like a folk hero. If it was like, yeah, he went to prison, but like fucking, it was his masterpiece. But it's rollerball.
Yeah. He said like if he were to tell a story, like what happened. Yeah, I was fighting with this producer, and I'm an artist, and so I want to preserve my vision, and I didn't trust those guys. I hired these guys. I know I broke the law, but like I had to fight what I believed in. Oh, that's awesome, man. What movie was it? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. The rollerball. Rollerball.
With Slipknot?
Yeah.
With all these charges, McTiernan was facing 5 years in prison, and he eventually sought another plea deal on all 3 charges. He was ultimately sentenced to 1 year in prison, 3 years of supervised probation, and a fine of $100,000. McTiernan's legal team once more tried to appeal the ruling, even trying to put it before the Supreme Court, but they refused to hear it.
Yeah, all right.
Nah, we don't care about this rollerball bullshit. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is just like, I saw a rollerball.
This reeks of like them being like, oh, you got a year in prison now, and then him being like, yeah. Oh, wait. And then being like, them taking him away to jail while he's blasting My Way by Sinatra.
Now, at that point, he's blasting Slipknot.
Well, their cover of My Way. Yeah. He commissioned this. LL Cool J tried to give him one. He's like, I don't want
it. Nah. I don't need that. You make music? McTiernan surrendered to a federal prison on April 3rd, 2013 in the federal prison camp Yankton, located in Yankton, South Dakota. The low-security prison is typically used for white-collar criminals, but it was difficult for McTiernan all the same. His wife, Gail Sistrunk, he's got some wives with some interesting names. What was it, Debbie Dubrow, Donna Dubrow or whatever? He picks his wives based exclusively on them being able to like get an email address without having to put numbers at the end of it. His wife, Gail Sistrunk, noted how his depression worsened going to jail and him losing 30 pounds. She also gave The Guardian a copy of one of his emails as a signifier of his deteriorating mental state.
People's faces change very rapidly. 1 frame in 10 will look completely different. That's why professional photographers shoot so many frames, because the face will change so rapidly, faster than human beings can perceive it. I'm starting to see those ghost frames. The frames where the person's face shows what he really thinks. There are many men here so close to dying. God damn.
Which, like, it's similar to him explaining why Die Hard's a Christmas movie, where it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, if you were trying to get people to sympathize with you, I don't understand what you're saying.
That sounds like... That sounded like it was sent by Werner Herzog. Yeah. Going to jail is depressing.
I don't think anyone was surprised. Like, what? He's like sad in jail?
Yeah. Being locked up, not good, is my understanding.
Yeah, I just don't really know what the point of that. Like, what was his wife trying to accomplish? Like, look at this email he sent me, and they're like, okay,
that sounds crazy.
Yeah. On top of all that, in October of 2013, when McTiernan was still in prison, he filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy amidst foreclosure proceedings for his Wyoming ranch residence. He faced additional financial difficulty with ongoing legal bills to appeal his conviction, IRS debts, and ongoing disputes with his ex-wife. The bank fought back on the bankruptcy declaration, with McTiernan's legal team saying he would be able to pay back all of his debts once he got out and could start making movies again. But a judge sided with the bank and agreed that McTiernan's assets should be liquidated and his ranch sold. But McTiernan also used his prison time to look forward to the future. He reportedly wrote a sequel to the Thomas Crown affair called Thomas Crown and the Missing Lioness, which he described the plot of thusly.
Nebuchadnezzar had 2 lion statues commissioned in 1100 BC, a male and a female. Alexander the Great took them when he conquered Persia. Mark Antony had them taken to Rome. Constantine moved them to Constantinople. And at some point, the lioness went missing. The movie is about what happens when it turns up at an auction. By the way, it's all bullshit. None of that ever happened.
McTiernan was finally released from prison on February 25th of 2014. Serving the remainder of his sentence until April 3rd that year at home in his Wyoming ranch, which he still owned at the time. And McTiernan wanted to go back to making movies. In the fall of 2014, he announced his next project would be from an original screenplay he wrote called Warbirds. John Travolta had signed on to star with Queen Latifah and Johnny Knoxville, apparently also getting offered roles.
Okay.
What
a trio.
John Travolta, Queen Latifah. I wish that movie existed just because I want to see like what that dynamic, how that even looks.
I am very curious. Like, does this mean that John McTiernan watched Jackass? Does he know what Jackass is?
Oh, he's a huge Jackass fan.
Yeah,
100%.
Like he was like that guy. Because I think Johnny Knoxville is actually a much better actor than he gets credit for. He's solid in the stuff that he's in. But, you know, again, hard to get a read on Johnny McTee. Does he sit at home and watch Masterpiece Theater, or does he watch, you know, other action movies? Because then he might have seen Johnny Knoxville. Maybe he saw Men in Black too. I don't know. Big fan of The Ringer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He until the day The Ringer came out, he was like Fellini all the way. He's like, I only watched Fellini. And Kubrick. And then The Ringer came out, and he was like, wait a minute. A guy pretending to be mentally handicapped so that he can be in the Special Olympics? Is that the premise of The Ringer? Is that what it is?
I don't recall if he wants to be but he's like, he is faking it. Yeah, I believe to like, I think because he ends up like coaching or something. I haven't seen it.
But he was like, this is art. However, with his subsequent bankruptcy proceedings, thereby liquidating his assets and freezing his production company, the movie never happened. Yeah. McTiernan also had an untitled action movie in the works, but it stalled because the film's producers wanted his old collaborator Arnold Schwarzenegger to star in it, and he didn't like that, saying,
they're trying to put in Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's a bad idea. I have to convince them not to.
And like, come on, bro. You just got out of fucking prison.
Right. like
do what they ask you to do.
Yeah, like take the chip shot, get back on your feet.
Oh no, they want you to put the 80s
world's
greatest
biggest
action star in your movie.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Who's come back from the his political career is like it just happens to coincide when you need him.
Yeah.
Like maybe he saw this is what like 2014, so maybe he saw The Last Stand. Now Knoxville's in that with Arnold.
Yeah.
Decent movie.
Basically, McTiernan has tried many times since his release from prison to get anything off the ground. Due to a combination of legal and financial issues, plain bad luck, and disenfranchisement with the entertainment industry, nothing has ever materialized. McTiernan's last project, as of this recording, is a live-action 2017 commercial for the video game Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands. So have you seen this?
No.
So this is literally the last thing that John McTiernan has ever directed.
I'm excited.
And I haven't seen it either. I purposely didn't watch it.
Let's see here.
Okay, so you're in this like you're in this safe house with these like vaguely racist caricatures of like
Latino drug guys.
Yeah, Latino drug lords. I don't even know like what specific nationality they are because it's just like kind of stereotypical and vague. And there's a white cat lazing in the safe house, and then a little red laser sight appears on the floor, and the cat notices it. And then the cat starts chasing it around, and the laser is like moving around the house, and these dudes are like playing cards at a table in the middle, and the laser slowly moves towards the table, and then it goes up, and the cat's chasing it around, and then the laser goes up and it stops on one of the dude's heads, this dude with like tattoos all over his body, and the other dudes are like, their eyes go wide, and then he gets headshotted, and they all get shot. And they're dead. And then it cuts out to some like recon commando dudes out, up on a cliff with a sniper rifle. And they took out these drug lord dudes.
They make sure to let us see that the cat is okay.
Yeah, the cat's fine though. The cat didn't get shot.
So that's what really matters. Yeah, little tribute to Predator there, as I said, like the laser sight and seeing on the guy's head and be like, oh shit, like right before Matt gets his head blown off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's like a pretty uninteresting. It's like when you hear like, oh, the guy who directed Die Hard made this commercial for this video game, you expect it to be like a really cool thing, and it's just kind of like any of these like video game commercials you see where they spend like way too much money on the commercial because they want to like bring a lot of marketing to the game, and so they spend like $1 million shooting a commercial for some shitty game that nobody cares about, and it's just like generic bullshit.
Yeah, I mean that could have been any like first person shooter ever. There was nothing about it that stood out and made me think like, oh, I gotta buy this, or like this game looks interesting.
Yeah, no, it was not, considering the pedigree of who directed it. It was just kind of nothing. But
I don't think he compared that to Shakespeare.
Yeah, no, but that's interesting that you say that, because my thought is like, aside from that just being kind of stupid and a little sad, the other thing is you just see in that commercial a guy who just like got in his own way so hard that he just ground his own career into the dust, because you cut back to that interview we watched where he's like, I don't want to make the same movie over and over again. I don't like to make these action movies and these movies that aren't even real movies. They're just like theme park rides or whatever. Yeah. I want to go to Europe and be like Stanley Kubrick and make, art. And because of that, he just like turned down and rejected all these movies over the years, to the point where he ground his career down to making essentially a commercial for a video game that's just like a scene from a shitty action movie.
Yeah.
Like that's where his like insistence on, staying true his vision led him, was to his career essentially just imploding, and then just like taking anything he could get, which ended up being basically some like video game dudes who were like, I love the Predator. Can you like do that for this? And him being like, sure.
Yeah, that was, that could have been a scene from any DTV action film of the last 15 years.
Yeah. So we saw where that got him.
Yeah.
The last film McTiernan was attached to direct before it fell through was called Tau Ceti 4 in 2019 that would have starred Uma Thurman. The description for the film goes as follows.
Tau Ceti 4 takes place on the war-torn fourth planet in the remote Tau Ceti solar system, where 3 heavily armed strangers show up, size up the various oligarchs and military thugs who terrorize the place, and set about killing every single one of them.
That sounds like it makes sense that did not get made.
Also sounds very much like the kind of movie he says he doesn't want to make.
Yeah, exactly. There's been no other projects McTiernan has been attached to since, and he regularly goes back and forth as to whether directing is something he'd ever do again. In 2024, he made comments stating how he still wants to direct several more movies before he dies. But later that year, in November, he mentioned in an interview how he never wants to direct anything again because of the failures of his final 2 movies, Rollerball and Basic. These days, he's far more content with script doctoring, basically revising existing screenplays. And that leads us to today. John McTiernan is still out there, fixing scripts. Anthony Pellicano spent 16 years in federal prison for a litany of crimes. He was released in 2019 and was later hired by Daryl Katz, the billionaire owner of the Edmonton Oilers, to discredit a woman who filed a sexual misconduct lawsuit against him. And looking back at his time in prison, McTiernan admits he was likely mostly a fall guy in the Pellicano case, considering the numerous other A-listers who had retained his services but didn't face any legal consequences. He even looked back fondly on his time in prison in a 2023 interview with The Guardian.
I had worked as a carpenter all through college, so they put me with the carpenter crew. I spent my whole time, the whole summer, up on these big old Victorian houses, tearing off roofs and putting new roofs on with my shirt off in the sun, just like I was back in college.
There's a high probability John McTiernan will never direct another movie again. But hey, he made Die Hard, so his legacy is already secure. Well, Steven, in your inaugural Deep Cuts episode, usually we do like a closing thoughts where we kind of, sum up our thoughts on the story, any takeaways we've gotten from it, and just like the general reflection on like the main thesis of what we got from the story. So what are your closing thoughts on our boy Johnny McT and his life of slow descent into nothingness?
It feels very much to me like a guy who was a product of his time. The 80s were pretty fast and loose. They hired people, hey, can you get the job done? Let's go crazy and do all this, insane shit. And with, like we said, with Predator, he's, doing those moving pieces, things that are failing. With Die Hard, he's got this crazy concept that's, to us, not that crazy, but it is crazy. It's going against the grain of the time period. And then the 90s roll around and he kind of gets like bloated, with like Last Action Hero and some of these other projects. And I don't know, I just kind of feel like the industry moved on beyond him. And that whole thing with Rollerball seems like a guy desperately trying to retain control and getting a lot of trouble for it.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that is what it is. It's like he was a studio wonder boy because he made Predator and Die Hard, and people were like, "Fuck,
yeah,
this guy is the best." And he got maybe a not undeserving inflated sense of ego, but he didn't take the right lesson away from it. You are great at like taking on these studio projects and like spinning them into gold.
Yeah,
you're not Stanley Kubrick,
right?
And he thought, oh, I'm great. These people love what I do. I can take my talents and go and become Stanley Kubrick. I can become this auteur, basically. He wanted to be an auteur, but as you just said, he was actually like just a really competent studio director. And so because he was so focused on this obsession with wanting to be an auteur, the industry moved on past him and without him and evolved away from what he brought to the table. And he just didn't notice it. He was like the last to know that everybody had moved on. And so the rest of his life was this slow fade out because he just couldn't accept that he was good at a very specific thing and nobody needed it anymore. And then he basically just like pounded himself into obsolescence.
It's extremely ironic that last quote from him is about what a great carpenter he is. Because that's what he is. He's like a craftsman, like filmmaker who can build things. He's not Stanley Kubrick, who's like a virtuoso painter who's going to make this amazing, or like an engineer or something's going to build this cathedral. He's like a guy who can like build a sturdy,
but he doesn't
he doesn't see himself that way.
He doesn't realize that. And yeah, his vision of himself is an auteur.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not.
No.
And that's fine. That's great. You're a great director. Your good movies are some of the best.
I seriously love
But you just took the wrong lessons away from the ego stroking that you got in the 80s.
the level of like success that comes with something like Die Hard and Die Hard with a Vengeance and Hunt for Red October and these like classic movies. It's like immortality, and some of the auteurs that we love would probably kill to have that kind of like recognition.
Yeah, 100%.
And he's like, fuck this. So
I want to go to Europe.
And like, no, I get that, but he also seems ungrateful for like, dude, have some pride. You made Die Hard, and like, be happy that like, if you don't do anything else for the rest of your career, that will live forever. Yeah. Like, very few people have that. Like, the fact that, like, you mentioned it earlier, people watch Die Hard every year. It's on TV every year. People love Die Hard. Like, it's one of these movies. Same thing with Predator. He's got multiple bangers, and he doesn't seem to, like, be happy about it.
But, and the thing is, ultimately, there's, like, two types of bands. There are the bands who had that big hit 2 decades ago or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And when they go to concerts, they have all their new material, they have their new albums, and they play that stuff. But at the end of the day, they know that everybody wants them to play that one specific hit, or maybe 2 or 3 if they're lucky.
Yeah.
And there's the type of bands who recognize that, and you're like, you know what? I wish that the stuff I was writing now could achieve that level of success.
Yeah.
But I want that for myself, and I really want my new material to resonate with people. But ultimately, if it doesn't, I'm going to honor that relationship that I have with these people, and I'm going to be like, you know what? As long as you hear me out a little bit and listen to a few of these other songs that we wrote, this year, we'll play the fuck out of that. And then there's the type of band who's like, no, fuck that. I'm tired of that song. I never want to play it again. You listen to our new stuff. That thing that was a hit, that's bullshit. That only got popular because of all this commercial, marketing shit. This is the real art. And this is what I'm going to play. And don't you dare ask for that other thing. And, I'm not saying that those people are dumb or bad or whatever. Like, sure. I get feeling like that. But sometimes you just got to play the hits, baby.
I mean, if you make that choice, you live with the consequences of making that choice. He doesn't want to live with the consequences of making that choice. He wants the same sort of success. And it's, to me, he also comes across as a guy who points a finger at anybody but himself. Like, it's always some issue with the producer or something, or the studio or whatever. And don't get me wrong, that stuff happens. That happened to me in real life. But some of these movies he did, especially after, Die Hard with a Vengeance was a massive success. That made a lot of money. And he like squanders all of this by making some bad movies in a row, like really bad. And we're talking, it's one thing to be critically bad, but these are movies that lost a shitload of money. Like Rollerball and The 13th Warrior and Basic lost like hundreds of millions of dollars. And, if you're not like this amazing person that people are going to keep taking chances on, even though you're not delivering the goods, they're not going to keep giving it to you when they could hire somebody else. He's not the only game in town. Like, look, Die Hard is one of the greatest action movies ever made, but it doesn't mean that there haven't been incredible action movies since. So, like, this guy's not irreplaceable.
Yeah.
Is the kind of thing. Like, he's not James Cameron, like, in terms of like the realm of like the blockbuster. Don't ever bet against this guy.
Well, yeah. I think the one thing that maybe John McTiernan would find some solace in is his life played out like a Shakespearean tragedy of a man who just took all the wrong lessons away from his life and career, and through the transformative power of his endless ego and obsession with control, he lost everything, and he was the last to know. And on that note, I'm Andrew Price.
I'm Stephen Reyes.
And this has been Deep Cuts. If you want to follow us on social media, you can follow us on Facebook. We have a Facebook group. You just go to Facebook and search the Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group. We talk about the show. We make memes. There's a cool little community of people there that hang out and discuss episodes. You can also join our Discord server, bit.ly.com/deepcutsdiscord. That's another cool community of people who hang out, talk about the show, make memes, play games. I tend to get on there because, long days of working and editing. Sometimes I blow off steam by just going and hanging out in the Discord and talking with people. So it's a good way of, if you want to ask about episodes or, request an episode topic, there's a good chance you can get a hold of me on the Discord. You can follow us on Instagram at DeepCutsPod. You can follow us on TikTok at Mystery Treehouse. You can follow us on YouTube by searching Deep Cuts Podcast. You can follow me on social media by going to TikTok and searching for @TreehouseDetective. I'm on there. I make cool videos that are just like fact explainers. A lot of times whenever we make episodes, there will be like additional facts and details that I learn while researching. And I'm like, this doesn't really fit into the episode, but it's a cool like 3-minute explainer video, and I'll put it on TikTok and I talk about some cool stuff there. You can go to my website, dapricewrites.com, and you can pick up my book, Deadbolt AI Private Eye, which is a comic about a robot detective in the future solving crimes and dealing with existential crises. You can go to deepcutspod.com and get some merch. We have t-shirts, we have hats, we have baby onesies, we have shoulder patches, all kinds of good stuff there with the cool Deep Cuts graphics on them. This is, for the time being, this is what we're doing. Dave will be back, but right now we're hanging out with Steven. Deep Cuts is a production by Boy Genius Media. If you'd like to find this show and others like it, please visit boygeniusmedia.com or deepcutspod.com.
If you want to join in on post-episode discussions, please join the Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group. Finally, subscribe to our YouTube channel for additional video content.
The incidental music for this episode was created by D. Catalano, whose music can be found at wekeepoddhours.bandcamp.com. This episode of Deep Cuts was written by Mike Bedard. The episode was edited by Andrew Price. If you'd be interested in writing for Deep Cuts, email andrew@boygeniusmedia.com.